My girlfriend sent me a TikTok video a little while ago showing a man sitting his sons down and asking if you could get dad to stop doing anything, what would it be? And unfortunately, they all said yelling. Now, I know a lot of people grew up in situations where yelling was the most common way of speaking. It seemed like you were out of line in damn near anything that you did. And unfortunately, people had to grow up in these situations. Luckily for my son, he is not going to. This speaking tone is typically what I have around the house unless I'm excited for some reason. And of course, vocal inflections happen. That's just a given. But yelling like that, especially over nonsense things, could you imagine being upset at a baby for being a baby? So my applaud goes out to all of the parents that are turning the stone. They are breaking the generational curse. They are starting new for themselves. Also the ones that set down the hard lines when it comes to the new grandparents trying to step over things and potentially say something that could not only damage the child, but damage a relationship with the family in total. If you are a grandparent watching this, try to consider whether or not you at your family gatherings have as many family members there as you once did. If you have a family dinner and your children aren't talking to you and you aren't seeing your grandchildren, maybe it might be time to sit down and have a little bit of self reflection. Ask them wholeheartedly and without judgment what is causing these situations. You might be surprised to find that the way that you raised them was a big impacting factor on this decision. Since within the last couple of months I've become a new father, I have heard horror stories of situations where old men would ogle at young women and their children and give them bedroom eyes. That should be enough to send them straight to prison alone. Oh my God. People out here are a lot better than me. If I saw somebody ogling my child, well, a right hook would be the only answer. It's weird becoming a dad. My dad wasn't around in any respect until later in my life, and I found out my personal reasons as to why he shouldn't continue to be around. I've had my son about 5 months now and haven't talked to my dad in well over a year. So one example of the way that you act to your child will directly impact whether or not you see your grandchild. So with that, I'm changing the generational curse of fathers not being present. Now, I will say, in my mom's parents, thankfully, my grandparents were around all the time. They were great people, are great people. Great grandparents were around too, so I got blessed in that regard. But on my father's side, it was only him. Now, this video is going to be a little bit of me rambling. I'm just going to be talking about things, how I want to change things in my family's dynamic. My girlfriend and I both grew up in really harsh environments, and that's to leave out a ton of details. I'm not going to get into it. Her story is hers to tell. I will give you mine. I had my mom around. Actually, I'm just going to lay it all out. Like I said, this is my story to tell, so I'm going to give you guys all the sides that I can. Of course, my mom was around. She raised me as a single mother, and I say single loosely, having boyfriends in and out almost damn near constantly. Enough to the point where I was going to start asking these boyfriends, when are we moving in with you? That just seemed to be the normal case, and people can get mad at this all they want for me airing this out, but this is my story. This is how I grew up. So my grandparents on my mom's side, amazing people. I am lucky, so lucky to still have them. My Nana is amazing, a very fiery red-headed woman who, if you say a word in a sentence that reminds her of a song from years ago, she's going to break out in that song. Also, if you have red diamond sweet tea, watch out because that will disappear faster than you realize. My poppy, an amazing man. This dude is talented. He built it's like the glasswork with the colors. I don't know the specific term for it, but he made one of those, put it in their house that they've lived in for, I don't know, 30 plus years. He's a veteran. I've heard some crazy stories. He's got a great taste in music. And the more that I find out about his younger years, I'm like, Poppy, you were a wild guy. Plays ukulele. There's actually videos on Instagram where he was posting him playing the ukulele, and luckily I'm going to have that forever. So very, very cherished memories there. He was basically my father figure growing up. He drove a PT Cruiser, and I can remember listening to the old rock and roll stations on the way to go get bug juice at the gas station with him. I also had my great grandparents on that side for a while. I had my Nana. I would come home and sit down and watch Jeopardy and Ellen with her for forever. That was just my go-to thing. She lived on her own well into her 90s, and then towards the end of her lifespan, she lived with my grandparents. I got to come there every single day after school, watch Jeopardy and Ellen with her, eat the little Thin Mint peppermint patties, and we have so many recipes from her for little goodies that anytime somebody makes our family's party mix, oh my God, it's so good. Unfortunately, I didn't have my papa around very long. He passed away whenever I was young. One memory of him, and I just remember being a baby and him smiling at me. So that's a great one to have. I've heard plenty of stories of him. Seems like a great guy. Now we can talk about my dad. This is a very interesting subject. I'm going to give you guys kind of a backstory. So my mom and my dad had me very, very young. I don't know the entirety of the story of them splitting up. I still find out things randomly that I was like, why wasn't I told this? So I grew up in a household where my dad was basically the devil. And of course, in most situations with single parents, this is usually what happens if they are separated and not on good terms. It is, do not end up like your dad. Do not be like your dad. Anytime I acted out, you're just like your dad. I think my mom held some type of anger against me, mostly because my dad and I are basically twins. He really said copy and paste and then left. Now, when it comes to my dad, he is in a couple of industries. It's really weird. I'm going to talk about some stories of my personal experiences with him that have led to the point where I don't really associate myself with him anymore. So he's in the music business. He runs a record label company out of Texas and a lawn care company. He does odd jobs like that in that company and then works with artists all over the place. The entirety of this video is basically me talking about me being a dad, to my family's experience, and then after all of this, what I'm planning to do to make sure that none of that happens for my son. I had off and on interactions with my dad for a really long time. I don't remember a lot of the younger years. I remember seeing him for some birthdays, but that was about it. Not to mention the fact that I was there when both my parents cheated on their significant others with each other. Great story. That one really drove a knife into what the hell is going on as I was a small child. I was probably 8 years old. That's besides the point. My dad was also a fighter in Texas for a long time. I'm sure somebody could do the digging and find out all this information on him. He was a fighter. He runs the businesses, like I said, and then he's also in movies. At one point, he was toting around the fact he was going to be in a Netflix movie. I don't even know where that movie is at now. I'm looking at his IMDb page, and it says known for 3 different titles. I'm not going to throw them all out here. I'm not going to even drop his name. I don't want any of that, but that's interesting in this movie because he plays a lawyer and I'm sure he has a lot of dealings with that side of things. One of the first pictures I saw of him whenever I Googled his name was a mugshot. So that's great. I'm the oldest of an unknown amount of kids. About 2 years ago, I got a message from a girl on Facebook that was like, hey, I don't know you, but I know our dad's name. I'm your sister. This is the first girl, I think, or second or third. I don't know. Like I said, unknown amount. The first older girl that I've got in contact with, she's 16 at the time, so 17, 18 now probably. Figuring out all this info about my dad would be like playing a detective game. You never know what is completely honest, and you can't take it from the source because that one likes to spin things to his advantage. And I'll give you a prime example. The longest standing time that I ever had an introduction with my dad is whenever I moved to Texas. He was nice enough to offer me a place to stay in Texas where I was able to get my bearings after moving out of my hometown for the first time in 23, 24 years. And it very quickly went south. Another great example of why I shouldn't have had this man around. So within the first 2 months, everything was fine. He would come home after working or doing whatever, very busy man. He worked in the music industry and the bar industry, so it wasn't uncommon for him to have drinks. Now, this specific time, I had gone to bed. This is a very interesting story. I went to bed and I was woken up by the sound of yelling. And in the households that I grew up in, I haven't even gotten into the physical abuse side of things whenever I was younger, both against me, my younger brother, and my mom from the boyfriends that she had. But I was used to yelling at night and thought nothing of it, went to bed, woke up to my stepmom yelling at me to call the police, and then I fell back asleep, woke up to the sound of police outside. So evidently, my father had come home, threatened to kill everyone in the house, including me. I don't know what was happening, but from the pieces that I could put together, he thought that she was cheating on him. I've been around plenty of times where he definitely has either emotionally or physically cheated on her. This is not uncommon for him. If you look at him, you would be able to assume that he's this kind of guy. Also the kind of man that makes jokes of, oh, it's bad when the women that you hook up with are younger than your oldest son. Does that kind of drive a point? Anyways, I waddle out of my bedroom halfway asleep in just gym shorts, and I'm greeted with guns pointed at me from the front door down the hall. I'm very promptly put into handcuffs because I match the description as well of my dad as a adult male, and unfortunately, in the report he had a weapon, which he very promptly ditched, I'm pretty sure at some point. Now, he would be arrested for this. I'm sure there were some charges pending, but my stepmom very quickly got a protective restraining order, and then I became the middleman for conversation, unfortunately. I was working at a Lowe's down there, and I was getting text, phone calls, all kinds of things, even my dad showing up to my work, trying to figure out how he can get all of his stuff from her or mend things. Now, I'm sure that there is some law within this that was like, hey, you're not supposed to do this on his end of don't reach out, but they were having conversations on their own, breaking the protective order. It's just a giant mess. So this whole situation, threatening to kill me and everything, wasn't great. That took some time to go over, and I still wasn't at 100% with him, and I don't think I ever will be. Bringing this back to the point of me becoming a father, whenever I found out that I was going to be a dad, I called my family and I was like, we're having a baby. His response was, really? And I was like, I'm not joking, I'm having a child. His words that left his mouth were, if you're happy, then that's good, I guess. And that's something that will never leave my brain. I, of course, didn't like that reaction. He said that we would talk whenever I got back into town because my girlfriend lived 3.5 hours away at the point. And I was like, okay, like, we'll see where this goes. A little while later, once he wasn't so busy doing whatever he was doing, we went and got sushi. And I sat down and I explained to him that, ask me questions like, oh, we should go on a trip, we should celebrate. This is an avid Las Vegas goer. I'm pretty sure he cheated on my other stepmom at the time when we went to Vegas on my 21st birthday, because there was some woman that was hanging around a little too much. Anyways, we were sitting down having the sushi, and I broke the news to him that whenever my girlfriend and I get married, I'm going to be changing my last name. Now, this can be a very controversial point because everybody thinks that you're supposed to carry the man's last name, yada, yada, yada. If you listened to this story and knew any more of the deeper details of my father, you would understand why I don't want my son to have his last name. I'm pretty sure that makes it very apparent. Usually if I just go, yeah, I'm taking last name, and I don't give all of this backstory, that people usually kind of throw a fit, which he did. His face got so red. We're at a really nice sushi restaurant too, and he very promptly goes, that's the gayest shit I've ever heard, and then started yelling at me and was like, I'll never speak to you again, yada yada. I wasn't too upset by this. I mean, majority of my life he hadn't spoken to me anyways. It wasn't like I wasn't going to be able to fend for myself. So he got up, grabbed his keys, slammed some stuff over, and then very promptly left me with an over $100 tab, which I could not afford because I was poor and also trying to save for a baby. So that was great to figure out. It's been well over a year and I still haven't spoken to him even though he's tried reaching out. Take all of this information into consideration. How do you think I'm going to want to be as a father? The complete and total opposite of every single situation I have ever been in relating to my parents. Even now, they're not great. I don't know too much about my dad because he reached out months ago, and of course, I did not respond. But man, once you grow up, you really find out the roots of things. And I want you, based on my story and my experience, to not be afraid to tell people about this. It's your story. It doesn't matter if it makes the person look bad. If that's who they are, then that's who they are. If you go, man, dude, your mom was a piece of shit. Man, dude, your dad was a piece of shit. Well, welcome to the exact same conclusion that I have come across over the last 26 years of my life. My little boy will never have to experience things like this, ever in his life. And if something were to go wrong and I were to act out in any sort of way, then I would hope to God that my girlfriend would leave me and I would get whatever deserves to be coming to me. If you're in an abusive relationship, find a way out. If you are a child and you're in an abusive family situation, do your research, figure out what you can do to get out of those situations. Now, it might suck in the short term, but in the long term, I promise you, whatever you will avoid getting into your psyche will be for the better, I promise. If you're wanting to break generational curses, I applaud you. Please do it. Do your research, figure out where you can be better as a parent, as a person. You don't have to yell. The normal speaking tone does just fine. You can figure out other ways of parenting to work around that. Not everything has to be a let me scare my child into submission. Your children aren't an object for you to control. They are a human to help nurture. This is normal. This is how it should be. I don't understand why people have to lash out in some regard like what I've mentioned. If you're a single mom and you're having repetitive boyfriends through, I urge you to do a little bit of soul searching and figure out why you do that. Are you a codependent person? Do you just have to fill the void for some reason? I don't know, but whatever you need to do that. If you're an absent father, by God, please, unless the woman is an absolute she-devil, do whatever you can to at least be there, and when you are there, be a great father figure. Don't take any second that you can to cause problems. I see way too many people doing the obvious dumb decisions. Think about this for a second. If you had a friend and they had all the same attributes as you, what kind of advice would you give them and then follow it? The whole thing of follow your own advice is very, very true, damn near every single circumstance in life. If you were telling a best friend, hey, maybe don't get back with your ex, hey, maybe you shouldn't get back with your ex. Just as a prime example, a lot of these trends where it was like when my girlfriend gets back with her ex and they're like, when I get back with my ex and they're like, yeah, like, you serious? Double standards? Like, hold yourself to a certain standard and hold your friends to a certain standard. You are not obligated to interact with basically anyone. If your family is toxic, you can find a way to get away from them. And if you set up boundaries and they step over them, when you do come into contact, well, there you go. You have your answer. No answer is also an answer. I gave my dad an ultimatum and I was like, hey, I'm not going to have this around. He acts like that. Well, guess what? Over a year of no contact and I'm completely fine. And I'm sure at some point, if his movies ever take off, you can expect another video like this or something just literally laying out every single detail of every single interaction that I've had with receipts because you know I keep them. Don't be afraid to call people out, especially if they're aggressive, abusive, and just downright horrible people. You can be a great parent. You might not have had the examples. I sure as hell didn't. Take that in stride and know how not to be. Any negative that you've had that is an impact to your development, just know, well, as long as I'm not like that, then I'm already doing something right. I know a lot of women struggle with this. If you're making the comparison of, am I doing enough for my child? Just think about what you came from and think about what you're doing. Our son has a playpen. Do you think I ever had a playpen? Do you think my girlfriend ever had a playpen? No, we did not. The fact that he even has a dedicated area to do what he wants, and we ask him, you know, we make choices like, do you want to wear this or do you want to wear this? And if he reaches his hand towards that, we're giving him options. We're not just like, oh, this thing again. Your baby, like I said, it's not an item for you to control. That's a person. You're helping it nourish and develop. Whatever interests he's interested in, I'm going to full force be like, all right, let's go. It doesn't matter. I do gaming and stuff. I wish that my parents would have supported this. I probably would be a lot more developed in this field, you know, yada. I had a lot more experiences than if they weren't like, get off the thing. Let me tell you, when I got my first nice check from doing videos and stuff like that, my mom was instantly like, oh, well, maybe you'll be able to do this for me. Yeah, okay. A little bit of a yap session, a little bit of more detail about my younger life, what I plan to do for my son, things that we can try to offer him. I do all of this because of him. There is a newfound passion burning inside of me of my son will have videos of me to watch, like I said, for years. People can chime in, leave a comment down below of your experience. If you want to point somebody out, don't be afraid. But if you're going to, be honest, be truthful. Don't throw out blatant just info that isn't gonna stick, okay? Be honest, truthful, be you, be authentic, all of those things. Like I've said, the you in YouTube. Hold people to a standard, okay? That's all you gotta do. Be a great parent. Be an understanding family member. Do whatever you can to get out of the horrible situation that you're in. Anyways, that's all I want to talk about. Just a little something off the top of my head. Been recording for about 25 minutes. Didn't really expect this to be this long. I originally just going to record this as a TikTok thing, and I was like, you know what? Whatever. This isn't my normal content post, but I'm going to put it out there. Don't be afraid to share your story. It is yours. It has happened to you, okay? Nobody can take that away from you. Don't worry about some sort of defamation thing because I'm sure if it's your life experience, you got plenty of details that you can unload about all these things. Don't be afraid to call out a parent, a loved one, a family member, whatever. If they're being abusive and neglectful towards you, you don't deserve that. You're a human being.